The conversation you're about to hear will be moderated by Kristin Sakoda, the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture Director. In a year of almost unthinkable loss here in Los Angeles County due to the fires, and not to mention the ongoing turbulence, the real fear in our city right now, we're going to shine a light with this conversation on initiatives and strategies in community care, in healing, and in resilience through the arts. Our panelists are Karen Anderson, Arts and Enrichment Coordinator for the Pasadena Unified School District; Renée Fleming, you know who that is, Special Projects Advisor, LA Opera, and WHO Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health; Jennifer Kuo is Arts and Health Initiative Consultant for California for the Arts; and finally, Dr. Nisha Sajnani, co-director of the Jameel Arts and Health Lab and professor at NYU Steinhardt. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Renée Fleming. I want to extend a warm welcome to you all, despite the fact that we can't all congregate in person. And thank you to Supervisor Solis and the LA Opera for your leadership and vision. I'm so grateful to the county for recognizing the importance of this work. We are in a unique and unprecedented moment. The challenges we face today are steep, national and worldwide. Increasing levels of anxiety and depression, and an epidemic of loneliness and isolation. In addition to extreme federal cuts in the arts and sciences, Los Angeles has been grappling not only with the devastation of the wildfires, but also with the federal response to immigration. So now more than ever, we can and should leverage the power of the arts for health and wellness. We now know, thanks to advances in scientific research, how impactful art is for our health and well-being and the connection to others. This is an ideal time to highlight and expand programming that repairs our social fabric and engenders hope. Thanks again to LA Opera and to Supervisor Solis.
So thank you all again for coming together for this conversation. I'm Kristin Sakoda, Director of the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, and I think by way of introduction, it'd be great to have each of you introduce yourselves and just briefly talk about what ways arts show up as part of community care, healing, and resilience in your work and life.
I'll start us off. Thank you so much, Kristin. So I'm Nisha Sajnani. I'm a professor at New York University, and I co-direct and co-founded the Jameel Arts and Health Lab with the World Health Organization and other partners. And the arts have always been a source of recovery and resilience, I suppose, personally in my own life, specifically dance and theater. And then I moved towards training as a drama therapist and now chair the Creative Arts Therapies Consortium and our Arts and Health Initiative at NYU. And the Creative Arts Therapies are, if we think about the arts and health along a spectrum of care, we can think about how the arts support us in everyday life on one side of the spectrum, just the arts doing what they do, to more directed forms of arts and health, arts and public health, and more targeted programs, all the way to the creative arts therapies, which are really embedding the arts in psychotherapy and rehabilitation. And so I trained as a drama therapist and work with wonderful colleagues in art, music, and dance movement therapy as well. I specialized in trauma and anxiety-related conditions, and one thing that really came through all of that work was that the difference between tolerable and toxic stress is the presence of supportive relationships and resources. And the arts are a resource. The arts are a health resource. And that is a lot about what my work is about today.
So, I've had a whole lifetime, certainly as a performer, understanding how music is incredibly helpful to people, because so many people have come up to me from my audience and talked about how they had, they were ill, they had lost a parent or a loved one. There's so many kinds of traumas that they experience, and they said, really, your music got me through, especially with long cancer treatments. So that was always, I think, very much my kind of favorite comment from people, was that this was more than just entertainment, more than just beauty of music and enjoyment of music, but also a lifeline for some people. And I myself, when I read Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is still a bestseller, learned so much about really deep trauma from that book. And when he also kind of invited us to think about the arts and said the theater saved his son, I really understood that, because so much of trauma cannot be expressed, and it can't really easily have words put to it. People struggle with that naming it, with even knowing what it is that's they're experiencing. So he really helped me understand that a lot more. But then also we had the NEA, the spectacular program Creative Forces, that helped and is still helping veterans with trauma, with physical trauma, with brain trauma, and with the trauma of warfare, of PTSD, et cetera. And there's no question that for these men, for whom their brain has actually been affected, they actually cannot express themselves. And so artistic means are extremely helpful to them. And then, the fires have been horrific here. It's hard for us to even imagine the devastation. My daughter lives here, and so as a worried mother, they were kind of in between two of the major fires, and she was sending me photographs of burning embers that were landing in front of her front door. And so I was checking the Fire Watch app, and every 20 minutes I was really, really concerned, and they were terrified, I have to say. So they were lucky this time, but we know that there will be a lot of next times, and we're having more extreme environmental and climate events, and we can't really deny that there isn't some change here. I mean, I totally believe in science across the boards, and so the science of trauma, the science of health, and also the science of climate.
Thank you. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the Arts and Enrichment Coordinator in Pasadena Unified. So we began this work with creative well-being and connecting the arts to wellness, which, as an artist myself, as someone who has worked in the arts my entire life as a performer and producer and different things, and then getting into education, we always know that it makes you feel good. And we know that kids connect to school when they are connected to the things that they're involved in, and those are arts organizations and arts experiences in the school. So we started with all of this work really coming out of COVID, and unfortunately we seem to have one disaster major event after another. I live in Altadena, and along with half of our staff of Pasadena Unified, we were evacuated. 10,000 of our 15,000 students were evacuated. 300 staff members lost their homes. So it's not just the students that we're serving, but it's how the staff works through the trauma and moves forward and is resilient for our students. And I think the collective experience helped us to want to move forward together even more. I mean, in our leadership, there's many people in the executive leadership at Pasadena, including myself, who were not in their homes for months or lost their homes entirely and still were doing the work. And so bringing the arts to our staff, so bringing artist residencies and work to our staff is equally important to bringing it to our students. And I knew coming out of the fire that no matter what, we had to do our district-wide art show, and we were going to figure out how to have students represented there with their artwork, even if it was lost in a school or in their home. And we had to do our All-Star Musical, which was scheduled originally for the end of January and ended up being at the end of February, and ironically was Hadestown, Teen Edition. So we were very proud to put on a professional production of Hadestown at the end of February. And those kids, that was the first thing. That night, I was getting messages as we're evacuating from kids saying, "Are we still going to do the musical?" And I said, yes. That's all I could say was just, yes, we're going to do it, So we did, and I think that the message of the show came through even stronger because the line, which is the big message of the show, is to the world we dream about and to the world we live in now. And that spoke to the kids in a very different way. So, And it spoke to the adults involved in the show. So I'm just really grateful to LA County Arts for the work we've been doing over the past 5 years in Pasadena. We didn't know we were going to have a wildfire, but I was able to just reach out to our partners at LA County and say, we need help, we need your arts partners, we need them there for our staff, we need them there for our kids, and they came. Because I know that's the most important thing, is that every one of our children has interaction with artists and interaction with arts activities for exposure to all 5 art forms. So anyway, that's a little bit of our story.
Thank you. Bringing tears to my eyes over here. All right.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Kuo. I wear many hats. Right now I'm currently the art and health consultant for California for the Arts. And so for me personally, I always lean into music and movement and dance as my personal creative outlet. I believe that we hold our issues in our tissues, so movement and dance is always good for our bodies. And of course, music is just an additional sense of added element of medicine too. So what I am trying to move forward and pioneer in this space is how do we educate, raising awareness? How do we socialize with convenings and conferences to learn from each other for best practices? And then ultimately, how do we vocalize this in the terms of advocacy? It can be large scale or small scale, just even talking to your neighbors, helping people navigate resources. And so during the wildfires, during that time, I'm sure like many of you, I was receiving a lot of emails. So I even created a folder in my inbox because there were so many emails coming from all different groups and orgs, providing information, providing aid, or even ways to locate resources. And I was just so inspired by all of these long-standing organizations that have been around for a long time, how they were able to pivot and prioritize their efforts. And also newly created, newly formed initiatives that really stood up and stepped up and went into action. So that was truly inspiring to see.
Thank you. So many great examples shared already, and just struck in so many ways. I mean, even just from the idea that the arts were one place that allowed you to just say yes. Yes. Yes, we can. Yes, we can hold that. Hold that space, hold that engagement, I think is actually, in some ways, boils it down to why it can be so important for social cohesion and keeping community connections. So I'll just share briefly, because you all inspired me in terms of just personally. I mean, you've heard a lot about what we do work-wise, but personally, my background was as a performing artist, primarily a dancer, but also singer and songwriting and musical theater. And lately in these times, music and the ability for music to help us regulate ourselves, our own heartbeat, or with others to set a mood, I have been more intentionally relying on it because I know, and also because of the need. There are literally some days where I will just turn to my partner, who his history is also in music, including in the music industry and as a former DJ and all these other things, and I will literally just say, "Can you play something for me? Can you?" And have him select something to set a certain tone that I need to take me to another place, to shift out of the day. And so just finding those moments, even personally, I think is so rewarding. But when we think about these, this is really, to borrow a phrase, civic trauma. Thousands of people evacuated, hundreds of people losing homes, audience members talking about grief and loss. I mean, how does it work? Why do you think, what is the relationship between arts and healing and recovery? What are some of the things you've seen about how it works or why it works that I'd love to hear you share? And you can go in any order, but Nisha, you look like you're maybe ready to go.
I'll start us off. So one of the reasons why the arts provide a balm, and I too have dosed myself with music and continue to do that to shift my mood if I need to, or movement, right? Shift the movement, and I'm going to remember that. Our issues are in our tissues. Yes. Well said. So I'll lift up the term aesthetic distance. That it's a term that we often use in drama therapy, but it's been used across the arts as well when we think about what is it about the arts that are providing an opportunity to hold. And the arts provide an aesthetic frame where we're not tackling something head-on, although for some that is exactly what they might need to do. It provides a symbolic distance to be able to feel the complexity, the multi-layeredness, sometimes the abstractions and the multiple connections to what's happening in a way that we don't immediately have to force a confession out of it. We don't have to tell ourselves or somebody else exactly what it means. It provides a nonverbal symbolic avenue to be able to sit with that complexity, whether we're viewing something or we're engaged in the making of it. And then, of course, when we're engaged in the making, there's that entire physical engagement that is even more involved. There's still a physical engagement when we're witnessing something. Of course, there's a lot of activity happening internally, right? But when we're making something, there's also that further opportunity to be physically involved and socially involved. So there's the social engagement, the cognitive stimulation, the imaginative stimulation, the sensory stimulation within an aesthetic frames that allows what is otherwise overwhelming to be a little less so.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I think is that trauma is very difficult to express. I mean, in most people, we don't acknowledge it. You know, if it's something that happened in your youth, or a lot of people just, they don't even think about it at all. And it has to be expressed for some reason. There has to be that moment of healing in some way, whether it's connecting the emotional to the experiential to the cognitive, but for some reason it really needs that outlet. And the arts can give people a way to be expressive without really quite immediately understanding what it is they've unlocked. And I have found certainly this connection to our emotional life, which in my lifetime, we kind of don't really think about that as important. Whereas a colleague of mine says we are actually feeling beings that think. We're not thinking beings that feel. The feeling side, both in terms of our nervous system, but also our emotional life, is far more important, and it drives us much more than we really know. So I think that's really an important thing. I went to a demonstration of turnaround arts at an elementary school in Washington, D.C. a long time ago, and saw this extraordinary learning that was taking place because children were creating at the same time. And so engaged that I thought it was abnormal that the classroom was so quiet. But they were engaged. And so the person who ran the program said that art therapy, visual art therapy, is especially helpful for children who've experienced trauma.
Yes, thank you. And that's Dr. Lisa Wong, the head of LA County Department of Mental Health. Yes, that was incredible, powerful, powerful. So tell us about, either the young people or the educators. How are you seeing it work?
You know, I think that it's interesting, just as you were speaking, I was thinking that human beings remember these big moments in life when something affected them. And I can't tell you how many adults come up to me and say, well, it's because in third grade, I went to the music center, right? Or it's because in third grade, or in fourth grade, I went to, the symphony, or I went to a play, or I had this one teacher, and that's what made me want to play the instrument or be in shows or sing or whatever it was. And I think those memories of big moments tend to come through in the arts. So that's why I feel like it's so vital for us to have these layers for our students of exposure to the arts, where every single student has the opportunity to go to the theater, to go to music performances, to go to museums, so that exposure piece, because you never know when it's going to hit. I don't know with second graders when they go to, Descanso Gardens and look at art in the garden, that's going to impact them 20 years later and say, it was because that one time I went to the Norton Simon Museum, I went to the Pasadena Playhouse, wherever I went, that it hit me. So I feel like that's our duty, and those common experiences engaging in something beautiful is something that kids remember when later in life, but also that sort of help to knock out the other things. So if they can remember those positive experiences in terms of exposure, but also the experiences in the classroom when they're engaging with artists, because they'll say, I remember Miss Alma. Miss Alma, who's one of our artists in our schools, is one of the Artists at Work recipients. So I mean, I'm sure you don't think of her as Miss Alma, but the kids do. And she's incredible. She's a ceramicist, and she works with students from kindergarten through 24-year-olds in our adult special ed program. And so I'm just so proud of her for being in that process. But, you know, those individual experiences with artists and with our teachers, and then those areas where we can really bring in experts for the kids who are moving towards college and career. I think all of those individual interactions, those social interactions, whether it's we're together at the theater with my friends and it was a positive experience, or in the classroom, or the one-on-one with professionals, those kind of layers of it. I think that's what helps us to heal, because it gives us perspective on the world around us, and it brings us in community through something really exciting.
How important is the group? I mean, I would have thought that a musical right after the fires would have been wonderful because they were all together. Is it
so?
True?
The
Do you think
group of
so?
cast and crew, absolutely. We had about 100 kids involved in terms of cast, crew, and pit orchestra. But then we also had all of our 5th and 6th graders go to the show. So that was, you know, and all of our high school performing arts kids. About 3,000 students went to the show and saw their high school arts leadership on stage and in the pit. So that community experience, I know our surveys for our open stage program, we call it, which is taking kids to the theater, always say, our student surveys, it's always in the 90th percentile of I really liked, the question is, going to the theater was a fun experience with my friends, right? And that's like always like 90th percentile there. And they also always respond to the question, I wish there were more theater in school. That's a good 80 to 90% of the kids say that. So after going to the experience, because if they don't go, they don't know what it is. How is a student going to ask for a drama class if they've never been to the theater? They don't know what it is. So we have to get them out there. And that experience, that collective experience of seeing real live people performing on stage is something that is like no other. And I just think it's our duty to allow that for students.
And in addition to phenomenal educators like you, who are just spreading the gospel but also making it happen, we have had just a few incredible examples just in these wildfires alone of the role of arts for young people. Everything that happened at Pasadena Unified with the musical and also with the No Boundaries art exhibit, their annual whole district art exhibit, and so we have to make sure we get into that. But there were also other examples. There was another school, an arts magnet school. They lost their auditorium in the fires. They were searching for a place. They ended up being able to do their student musical of Shrek Jr. at Center Theater Group on the professional stage at the Amundsen. And it was just, you could see the joy on the children's faces, and that they actually got to have this very professional experience out of it. I think they actually almost got something more and different out of it than they would have otherwise. We had organizations like Pasadena Playhouse, you just mentioned, that was giving away free tickets to Altadena and fire-impacted communities. The LA Phil at the Hollywood Bowl partnered with the county to do a whole thing where we were able to give out tickets. So it's actually been revelatory in a way. And I think one of the things, and before I go to you, Jennifer, and before we tip into advocacy and awareness on the next question, but one of the things we've been able to see is I've really been trying to center a narrative in this moment of the wildfires, because every disaster is different, which I think is so interesting. But in this moment, almost two sides of a coin. A lot of advocacy around the need to address and mitigate harm, losses that happen to artists, to cultural organizations, to our heritage, to local history, to artworks that were damaged, all of that, creative businesses. But the other side I call the strength side. We also at the same time are putting forward the message that the arts are vital to the recovery of the whole community. In healing, in mental health, in keeping youth in school, in rebuilding, in reimagining even what the community will look like and how to retain local character. And I honestly think the message is getting through. We're starting to hear it from other funders and other folks, and really getting that word forward in a way that I think could be a real model of arts in recovery for any situation, that we both need to ensure the artists and the practitioners practitioners are whole themselves, and ensure that these are strategies that we're using for anyone in the community who's dealing with loss. It's really
This
incredible.
sounds like resilience to me, and the science of resilience is now relatively new but very powerful, and it's something that you can share with young people to say resilience is a gift that we all have and you can utilize it. But that's fantastic what you're describing, and you too. It's amazing. Sorry, I think you
Yes.
were going to speak next.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about either how you've seen the arts work, or we can start moving into how you've seen it start to tip into advocacy.
Sure, I'll kind of speak about how I've seen it kind of play out in people's lives. So I think innately we all know the innate benefits of the arts. And it doesn't have to be that we are, trained to be the greatest performer. It's really about the process and not so much about the product. So using the arts as in terms of a self-expression tool, coping mechanism, and really tapping into that individual benefit and also collective healing too is really important. So an example I've seen in recent months is a nonprofit called Music Changing Lives. So they're a nonprofit transitioning into a foundation model. They were able to step up and provide relief distributions during the wildfires, and till this day they are still hosting reoccurring events called Heal Dina to provide services and supplies. And it's so inspiring to see this cross-sector collaboration of local government agencies, nonprofits, churches, small businesses come together for this. And another key element of what they're doing is weaving in the music and arts activities as a powerful tool for long-term recovery for social and emotional well-being.
Yes, thank you. So we've heard a lot already about incredible impact, incredible experiences, and even a bit about research. And I wanted to just uplift something that, a while back I looked again at the World Health Organization, something they called a scoping review. And essentially, they reviewed hundreds of studies that were about arts and health. I think this was in about 2019. And what they came out with afterwards was that they determined absolutely what we feel, what we all know in our lived experience is borne out in the data. That the arts support health, promotion, prevention, recovery, but they cited that really where we need to go next is we need to increase awareness. We need to increase collaborations between different partners across different sectors, right? Public, private, arts, health, and increase the awareness and the investment in this work to make it more widespread. And so for me, that became a mantle of, even as we keep learning and the research keeps telling us more how in neuroarts, and we keep getting better and better at understanding it so that we can refine how to use it. But right now, one of, I feel like, our biggest missions is just to raise the awareness. So how do you guys think, how do we think we can raise the awareness about this to be able to move forward health as part of resilience, recovery, and care?
Thank you for raising that report. So that report surveyed some 3,000 studies, and we're actually working on the next big report now, which we hope to have out in 2027, and that will survey the impact of the arts in over 140 countries, including a strong economic analysis, because we know that the advocacy is strengthened with the economic return on investment. What do the arts offer us economically, in addition to the social return on investment, of course? And so we hope that that will also fuel and become the mantra for many organizations that are hoping to raise awareness, but also to, as you said, facilitate implementation, because there's very good evidence, and we actually just need to act on it in many ways. Some of the work that we're doing now in this area with regards to climate change, with regards to conflict and care, we've been working on developing a resource toolkit that looks at how can we facilitate or enable artists to respond in moments of crisis, or what are some of the lessons that artists are learning that they can offer others. So we've been aggregating those insights and organizing them in a toolkit for artists who are responding. And there have been so many beautiful examples already shared that I'll just leave it there for that one. And we're working on a policy brief right now on the role of the arts in addressing the health impacts of climate change, and another one on youth mental health and the arts. And these are short documents that aggregate the evidence. What does the literature tell us? What are some wonderful case examples from around the world? And using a tool like that to be able to fuel the efforts that all of our colleagues are making.
Nisha, that's amazing. I can't wait to see this economic analysis, and especially the international analysis. But there's no question that we can make this contribution. And I'm all about advocacy, so dissemination is one of the hardest things. And you have this great program here that Goldie Hawn started that actually teaches young children, elementary school age children, about the brain. And so why can't we also start at that early age to teach them about some of the tools that they have for, definitely for any worries that they have as children, for tiredness, for the difficulties they have with their friends or siblings, families, et cetera. So these artistic tools are really powerful. I'm the NeuroArts Blueprint poster child this year because we all have some anxiety about the rapid rate of change in this moment and the chaos that exists. And I live in the DMV area near DC, and I think 50,000 people have just lost their jobs. So it's a very tough time. It's a lot to grapple with. And so I just give myself the gift of these artistic experiences every day, reading novels, walking in nature. That's one of my really favorite things. And of course, going to concerts, opera, and theater as much as I can. So I recommend this to everyone, and definitely expose your children and have conversations. I really feel Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, I heard him speak recently that our teens in particular need to learn how to have conversations that are positive, that are supportive, and this is what arts groups give to kids. It's this, if you're in a theater group or you play in an orchestra or sing in a choir, you're probably going to have positive relationships with your peers. So fantastic that you're doing that with your young people. It's so brilliant. But these economic, I think they're very important to sort of say to the country as a whole and the world that this is really going to benefit your society in multiple ways, not just an increase in well-being or even health. I mean, I personally feel strongly that the arts should be embedded in healthcare all across the boards. So I feel uplifted just hearing about the programs that you're all talking about.
Yeah, I think that the research is super important for us to continue to be able to uplift in terms of advocacy. And going back to just telling the story over and over again in so many contexts. Working in education, I've been really trying over the years to continuously tell the big picture story, the middle-sized story, and the individual stories of students and the impact. So we have that qualitative data that shows the connection between literacy and music, for example, because that's what people want to see. They go, okay, yeah, we know it makes you feel good, but we also want to know what it's doing in terms of helping the kids. But we know that if kids feel safe, then they can learn. So what helps them to feel safe? Lowering their affective filter, lowering those barriers through the arts and the content. It's all there for us, but we have to just keep telling the story and keep having that really rich research to put behind it so that these programs continue. I'm thrilled, thanks to Proposition 28 in California. For the last 2 years, we're going to start our third year of it. We have full 100% of students in elementary have visual art classes with specialists, music classes with specialists, and physical education, which includes dance. So I can't wait to see the data after 5 years of that, right? After the students have gone all the way through from K through 5th grade, or 6 years of that, because we're just getting glimpses now. But we know that that's a huge impact on their social emotional health, on their mental health, and on their academic progress. So I'm just really excited about that.
So many gems already of things that I want to follow up on afterwards, because what you just said is an incredible statewide study that could be done around if there's an increase in the arts, who's studying what the impact is, the post-impact of that is on the schools, on the educators, on the students themselves. I mean, that's fascinating. Earlier, Nisha, when you were talking about really the continuum of care, we could show models of ways that arts can be integrated into the continuum of care, but I also think it's really helpful for people to understand access to the arts everywhere. promotes well-being, but there also is a whole continuum all the way over to art therapy and folks who are licensed to utilize the arts in those ways, right? And so having even just a snapshot or like a toolkit or like a graphic of that. So I'm super excited. I know Renee about the Neuro Arts Awards and what you're doing to pair research with artistic projects together and spearhead that and bring national attention. So I'm thrilled about that. And Jennifer, tell us what's happening with California and Californians for the Arts.
Yeah, so well, back in 2021, there was a Senate concurrent resolution 40 that declared artists as second responders and essential workers in California. And it really recognized their work into supporting the mental health and resilience of first responders and community members too. So I think we're trying to build out more advocacy toolkits on many different levels, policy briefs as well. But really it's to highlight how the arts is a health behavior. Just like how we're told that good nutrition and exercise is good for our body, so is access to arts and culture and arts participation.
Yes, I love it. So much incredible work, so many beautiful insights and expertise that you all have brought to this conversation, and so many examples of partnerships across sectors with health, with research, with academia, with education. I'm just thrilled. And yes, with our elected officials and policymakers, we always want to make sure they're with us and on board because they have such huge impact as well. So to close us out, I just would love to invite you to share one thing briefly about what keeps you hopeful right now. I know, sounds tricky, but it's the opposite of, in some ways, right? The opposite of injustice is actually hope. Yeah.
I'll kick us off with that. What keeps me hopeful is gatherings and conversations like this. To just share with thought leaders and learning about all the different things, all the layers, and hopefully that will one day come to a nice, cherry on top of the beautiful cake that we're all trying to make.
Yeah, what keeps me hopeful with all of the challenges of the things that we have to do in school districts and all of the stuff is I get to go and see kids in action. So at the end of the school year, I saw second graders playing ukulele. I saw elementary choirs. I saw high school musical performances and bands. And I saw 4-year-olds, pre-K, doing their songs and movement and stuff for their spring shows. And that's what keeps me hopeful, because I think we as adults hold the trauma and hold the experiences in a very different way than our kids do. I was at an elementary school, Altadena Elementary, Altadena Arts Magnet, had to move locations because their school's inaccessible still. And I was at their new location and with them, and I was with the music teacher, and a class of kindergartners walked by, and the one girl said, "You're the music teacher from Altadena." And she said, "Yes, and now we're here." And then the other girl walked by and she goes, "My house burned down." And then she kept walking. And I thought, okay, they're processing in all different ways, but the good news is here's their music teacher, they're together with their same class, they're together with their teacher, and they're gonna be okay. So that's what gives me hope.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I feel the same way, that just the conversation we're having makes me feel hopeful, because I do believe so much in the power of the arts. And I would love to keep in touch with you, Kristin, about this possibility of really checking in and finding research about the effects of Prop 28. That would be incredible, because I believe that it will have an effect. There is a lot of science about youth and learning, about childhood development, and the effects of studying an instrument or any kind of artistic expression is so good for so many things. Teens with just identity and being able to express themselves. So there are many important things that you can look at, and I have confidence in you, Kristin. I bet it will get done.
Thank you.
That question was on my mind as well when you mentioned that we had just completed a population health study looking at youth arts engagement and where they're most exposed. And of course, no surprise, it's if you have higher engagement in school, you will have higher engagement out of school. And if we know the arts are a health resource, then this becomes a health equity issue. Who has access to that resource? In terms of the question of what keeps me hopeful, acts of kindness. Very, very small and large acts of kindness. The large scale, the last World Health Assembly, all countries present, all member states said social connection is a global health priority. And we know the arts are a pathway to social connection, and that is most deeply and perhaps most intimately felt through very small acts of kindness. And that lifts my spirits.
I love it. We're seeing acts of kindness all over. And so I think it is so important actually to keep those in mind, because so much of what we see sometimes can be only the negative and only the things that make us feel downtrodden. But arts and culture can uplift us. Even in the streets of Los Angeles, we've seen one of our grantee partners, Contratiempo, dancing literally with people who are out protesting, keeping the spirits alive in positive ways through culture. So I want to thank you, because all of you have been so inspiring. You all have been giving me hope. I feel like I'm hopeful because in many ways, we have everything we need. We really do. We have so many incredible assets and partners and just rich, rich, rich opportunities to continue to bring this work forward. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to our speakers. And I invite everybody watching to please, if you're not as familiar with the work of these incredible panelists and the organizations that they are a part of, I invite you to check it out. And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.